Next up, we have a conversation in partnership with Ares Charitable Foundation about their initiatives, and will highlight emerging issues for local investments to withstand global shocks. So please welcome to the stage Eliot Metzger, Director of the World Resources Institute, and Michelle Armstrong, Managing Director and Head of Philanthropy of Ares Charitable Foundation.
Well, good morning. So glad that you can join us for this, what we believe is a very important conversation. And good morning to you as well, Eliot.
Thanks, Michelle. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So just to start off, to give you a little introduction about myself, and then I'll turn things over to Eliot. I am Michelle Armstrong. I am the head of philanthropy at Ares Management Corporation. As some of you may know, Ares is a leading global alternative investment management firm, again with worldwide impact and presence. And I'm also executive director of our Ares Charitable Foundation, which is our philanthropic arm that allows us to impact communities globally through grants that we award, particularly with a focus on entrepreneurship, personal finance, and also career preparation and reskilling. We are particularly keen on helping to accelerate equality of economic opportunity, and so our funding priorities, we believe, help us towards working to that goal. One of the initiatives that we're most proud of, and I'm so happy to talk with Eliot about this morning and with you as well, is an initiative that we launched last year in coincidence with Earth Day called Climate Resilient Employees for a Sustainable Tomorrow, or what we call CREST for short. CREST is a 5-year, $25 million initiative that is intended to help individuals pursue and successfully enter the green job workforce, particularly focused on women, people of color, and individuals of low socioeconomic status. We believe that quality green jobs are important not only for the individuals who pursue them, but also for the companies and the industries for which they work, and also for the growing green global economy. Our partners for CREST are Jobs for the Future, which is working to help prepare 25,000 individuals across the U.S. for green jobs. And we also have, of course, World Resources Institute, which is helping to reskill individuals who work in micro, small, and medium enterprises in India to adopt and to apply best practices and sustainability. And the other part of WRI's work is what Eliot leads, which is called Voices. And so I will let Eliot introduce himself and talk a bit about the work that he's executing for the CREST initiative.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Glad to be here. Good to see everyone. I work for the World Resources Institute. I don't know how many of you already know WRI. We're about 40 years old. We were founded in DC, early 80s, at a time when there was a lot of talk about environment, how it affects people, how it affects the economy. Not a lot of information about, who can you trust? Everyone's got an agenda. WRI was founded to be that nonpartisan, sort of centrist think tank. We've grown into a global research organization. Like Michelle said, we have a team in India, a team in Brazil, China, Indonesia, Africa, elsewhere. We have a lot of interesting projects on a lot of different topics, but this one, I've been at WRI for almost 16, 17 years now. This is the most exciting project I've worked on because it sort of refocuses on people. And the thing we realized during COVID was we work with a lot of big companies on their sustainability programs, like the Walmarts, the IKEAs, the Nikes, like really big, giant companies, very innovative, very aggressive in their sustainability goals. But where's the focus on the people? And during COVID, we saw a lot of contracts canceled. A lot of big companies were protecting themselves during an economic downturn. That makes a lot of sense if you're a big company, but we saw a lot of people hurt, a lot of communities hurt, a lot of small, medium-sized businesses hurt. So we realized this is something that was a blind spot for WRI, a blind spot for a lot of the companies we worked with. And kudos to Ares and the team that Michelle leads on recognizing that, hey, we need more attention on this. We need to learn more about it. So that's what the Voices work is intending to do, is find those that are living this transition, living these impacts within the supply chain, understanding what they need to make these transitions with us.
And can you remind us what Voices is an acronym for as well?
It's really just meant to focus on the actual voice of the worker. It's meant to understand in their own words what is it that they need, because they're being asked to report greenhouse gas emissions, they're being asked to, adopt renewable energy, but is that what they need on a day-to-day basis? Is that what is on their agenda? The premise for Voices is that no, it's not. And we love our jargon at WRI, but we are anxious to find out what matters to those that are living this in the supply chain.
You talked about some of these blind spots. What are the blind spots that you're starting to see, particularly for those people who are employed in the supply chain? Who's going to help problem solve these challenges, and how do you think they're going to make that happen?
Yeah, well, so what we did was at the start, we looked at 1,000 corporate sustainability supply chain goals. And we said, okay, what are these goals focused on? They're focused on things like deforestation, climate change. Some of them were focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, enabling small businesses, but very few. Around 90% of those goals were pushing or pulling. They were pushing, their suppliers to meet what goals they were trying to meet for their own supply chain targets, or they were pulling them and saying, hey, our contracts are going to be, there we go. Our contracts are going to be set up in a way where we'll find solutions that are going to benefit us. And if it benefits you, great, but it's really meant to focus on us, the big corporation. So that push and pull dynamic was about 90% of those goals. 10% of those goals were more sort of an equal partnership between the large company and the smaller company. And that partnership is where we want to see growth. We want to see more companies adopting partnership models. IKEA's got a really interesting model where they buy renewable energy with their suppliers. And so they don't just tell their suppliers, hey, you have to buy renewable energy. They say, we're going to do it with you. And here's how to do it. Here's the capital that you can access. And here are the loans and the products and things that you can do with us. So I think that partnership model is really what we're trying to push and highlight. It's a big missing piece within corporate supply chain sustainability right now.
It's so interesting because when you talk about the challenges that those in the small and medium enterprises could face as a result of large corporates maybe discontinuing their partnerships with them, what happens then is that the workers within those small and medium enterprises find themselves out of a job, which goes back to why for us with CREST, this idea of reskilling individuals and also preparing individuals for green jobs really ties closely to this idea about supply chain equity, so that they have the skills, they have the knowledge, they have the training necessary to put some of those practices into action, and then hopefully be able to maintain that collaboration with the corporates, with hopefully the corporates also understanding the process that they need to go through to get to that point. But when you think about some of the issues that those small and medium enterprises are facing, do you find that those are global in nature? Do they tend to be very much localized or contextualized depending on where they are located geographically? What are some of those issues, and are they unique or distinct to where those businesses operate?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are some very unique local issues. If we're talking about a garment factory in India or Cambodia or Vietnam versus a garment factory in North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere in the United States, there are big differences there, obviously. Living wage is different in those different types of countries. But there are a lot of similarities. And actually, the thing that we've noticed that's really exciting is the trade-offs are very similar. And they're not easy to deal with. So if you think about that garment factory, maybe it's a small producing garment factory. Maybe it's 100 employees, 200 employees tops. They're facing this push and pull I mentioned with the large companies. Say like a Nike or somebody comes in and says, hey, we need you to reduce your energy use. We need you to cut your carbon pollution. They say, okay, that's great. We're going to bump up the air temperature in our factory, and we're going to raise the temperatures. We're not going to cool it off as much in the summertime. Meanwhile, summertime is getting hotter. You're dealing with more extreme temperatures for those workers. So how does that small enterprise manage what the workers need versus what their buyers need? Same dynamics happening in all these different countries. Same types of extreme weather, floods, droughts, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of that dynamic also between the big company and the smaller company. So one of the opportunities we're exploring is, what are the models, the legal models, what are the partnership models? In the US, there's the community benefits plans, the community benefits agreements. If you're going to tap into the Inflation Reduction Act funding that's flowing through the economy now, you have to find a way to make it benefit the wider community. We need those types of structures in other countries as well. So I think there's a lot that can be exchanged and learned between the different geographies. And with our economy being global as it is, I think there's a lot of opportunity for that.
You know, when you think about, like you mentioned, the CBAs and ways that this has effects that go outside of the small and medium enterprises, outside of the large corporates, it starts to affect people in their everyday life who may not be thinking about supply chains as something that's top of mind for them. When you think about the challenges that we are contending with supply chain equity, what are some of those ripple effects? You know, how, for example, are consumers affected?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the most direct way, I think we've all gone to the store and looked for something that wasn't on the shelf. And so that's a direct, sort of visual experience we've all had. But I think more interesting for us is, what is our relationship with the companies we're buying from? And I'm personally somewhat skeptical that someone can change an entire global corporation just by calling in a consumer hotline or something like that. But I do think the more we're asking those questions of the companies, the more we're asking the companies we work for, asking questions internally. I mean, the war for talent tomorrow is a big deal to these corporations. And the more they're hearing from the younger generation in particular that, hey, this is an important topic for us, I think the more they're paying internal resources and devoting internal resources to this. So I think as consumers, as employees, as customers of these big companies, we can ask those questions. We can be curious. The other thing that I think we're learning in Crest is that we need to better understand what it's like to live this experience. And I don't have that lived experience. I've not worked in a garment factory. I've not worked in an electric vehicle battery plant. But I think what I need is to talk to those people, to engage those people, and let them speak for themselves. And we had a research assistant at WRI a couple years ago. She had grown up in a village in Cambodia. She was the one that taught me more than anything else, like what it's like to be in that environment, to live that life. Her sisters worked in the garment factory to put her through school. And I asked her, I said, hey, what would it take for them to withstand climate impacts and droughts and floods and things in Cambodia? And she said, well, no one's ever asked my sisters that. They wouldn't even know what to say. So I think there's this big translation gap, this big translation challenge. We're talking at this high level and policy making here, and then there's this lived experience down here where nobody's really engaged that group yet. So I'm excited with Crest to do that. I'd be curious, those that are here today, like, is there somebody that you have in mind who's living this right now? And if you don't have that person in mind, go find that person and see if you can ask them some questions. Be curious, listen, learn from them.
I know our time is coming to a close, but I wanted to highlight one thing that you said to me earlier when we were talking. You mentioned the quote from the UAW president, and I thought it was so poignant, and I wanted to give you a chance to share it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So those have been following the labor battles and things. UAW settled with General Motors this weekend. The UAW president said, hey, we're not going to let corporate America force us to pick between a good job and a green job. And I was like, that's exactly what Crest is about too. And our partners at Jobs for the Future have a great resource. I highly encourage you to check it out. It highlights all the things that have to go into a green job to make it also a good job. And that's really important. We've talked a lot about green jobs for 10, 15 years in the US, and we really haven't put that definition to it yet. It's been more of a talking point, a soundbite, but now they're real. And I think we need to really pay more attention to the quality of those jobs. So a shout out to our partners at Jobs for the Future and that good green job definition, really, really important.
And on that note, I wanted to ask if we could have the graphic come up on the screen that we've shared. Today, in fact, Jobs for the Future, along with Eliot's team at WRI and along with our close partner Working Nation, have released what we call Climate Careers, which is a digital magazine. It's a living magazine, so you'll see updates in it over time, but it really spotlights, to your point, some of the research that both WRI and JFF have done about what is a good quality green job. It talks more in depth about voices. It talks about the work that's being done to help reskill those micro, small, and medium enterprise workers in India. And it also provides some context about Crest, the why behind it and what we're trying to achieve through it at Ares Charitable Foundation. So we encourage you to scan the QR code so that you can access the digital publication. I think the QR code may also be in the online agenda for today's summit, but please check it out and please continue to stay plugged into it because you will see updates in that publication over time. Eliot, any other closing thoughts?
No. Thank you, Michelle, for your leadership on this. And I think I've learned a ton working with you and with Crest, and it's really challenged some of my assumptions. So I think just a call out to everyone, don't be afraid to learn something new from someone who's living a different life. And I think that's really important for WRI. We talk a lot about environment, we talk a lot about climate change, but it's different when you're living it.
Yeah, thank you, Eliot, for your partnership,
Thank
always. And thank you all for the time to talk with you this morning. We really appreciate it. Thank you.